All right, beautiful people. Today we have an incredible guest and a dear friend of mine, Cameron Fletcher. She is a holistic food scientist bridging the gaps between nutrition, food science, and manufacturing. She's literally fostering an entire new field, and in today's episode, we are demystifying everything in regards to labels, ingredients, what we should be avoiding, what we don't need to worry about. You are going to walk away with so much knowledge after this conversation. I cannot wait to dive in. Are you tired of feeling overwhelmed by health advice, struggling to stay consistent, and craving more ease in your diet and calm in your mind? Then you are in the right place, my friend. Welcome to the Health Habit Podcast. I'm Maria, a nature-loving herbalist, science-obsessed nutrition therapy practitioner, and your guide to holistic healing. If you're ready for simple wellness solutions, nutrition tips, and mindset shifts to help you feel energized, fulfilled, and in control of your health, then brew up some tea or crack open a kombucha, and let's get into it. Before we dive into the content, I just want to give you a little bit more background into the incredible human that is Cameron Fletcher. So Cameron is an award-winning food scientist and currently a student in the Masters of Food Science program at Cornell University. She has a bachelor's degree in nutrition and food science from the University of Vermont and has spent 2.5 years working at Wegmans in manufacturing, quality assurance, and product development. Currently at Cornell, she is doing some incredible research that is focusing on using mushroom mycelium as a sustainable protein and fiber-rich plant-based food ingredient. This could literally be foods of the future. It's amazing. We're definitely going to talk more about it in the future. She combines her background in nutrition, food science, and food safety, but with a deep undercurrent of passion for holistic health. So this gives her a really unique perspective on all things food science, and today, food additives, processed foods, and food labels. So let's get into it. All right, welcome to the podcast, Cameron.
Thank you so much, Maria. I'm so excited to be here. Maria is one of my amazing friends. We've talked a lot about bringing me onto the podcast and kind of spreading some information and education to you guys, kind of bridging that gap between nutrition and food science. And I'm just so excited to be here. I'm so proud of Maria. This podcast has been so amazing, and I'm just so excited to be a part of it.
All right, so the first question that we should cover is, what is food science, and what do food scientists actually do? Because I know there is a lot of confusion about a nutritionist or a dietitian versus a food scientist. So give us a little bit of a rundown.
Yeah, I think it's such an amazing question. When I tell people that I'm a food scientist, they usually will think I'm a nutritionist or a dietitian. Really, if you want to think about a food scientist, it's somebody who has an expert knowledge of food safety and ingredients to make a product safe and stable. So if you think about anything you really open from packaging or from a jar, that company probably has a food scientist. There's kind of a lot of different subsets to food science. You've got food safety, you've got product developers, ingredient formulators, you have sensory scientists, chemists, food engineers, the people who are actually making the machinery. So ultimately, there's really not much nutrition education kind of really included in that. So that's where people like me come in who have that nutrition education and really want to bridge that gap between, is it healthy, but is it also safe and stable?
So if I understand correctly, a nutritionist or a dietitian, their focus is what does a body need to thrive, right? And then a food scientist is food safety, understanding all the complexity about ingredients, how you cook them, and putting just the food and the processing together. Does that seem right?
Yeah, I would say so. I think that there's a lot of culinary knowledge that comes in with that, but it's a little bit different when you have, okay, is this going to be healthy and is it going to taste really good? But then you're going to serve it that day or within 2 days. Where if you have something on the shelf for weeks, months to years, there's really a different subset of knowledge that comes into that to make sure that it's okay to eat, but also really good for you.
All right, so I know a big thing that I coach people on is ingredient labels and how to read labels. And honestly, as a nutritionist that doesn't understand the complexity of additives and fillers and all of that stuff, I generally tell people, if you don't recognize the word, not to consume it. So I'm curious, like, from a food scientist, are there any just like additives, fillers that you should just absolutely avoid and not consume?
Yeah, I absolutely love that perspective. I feel a very similar way from, from nutrition education, but also just as a consumer, kind of looking at ingredient labels and being like, should I really eat that? I think one of the main things that comes top to mind is preservatives. So you've got potassium sorbate and sodium benzoate, which are some of the most common preservatives if you think of like a shelf-stable, thick sauce, for example. So those in general, I tend to tell people not to eat just because they can really mess up the gut microbiome. For sodium benzoate, it has some endocrine disrupting effects as well. And one of the things to also kind of look out for is if it's combined with vitamin C, it actually can have cancer causing issues because it causes benzene to be formed. It's a little bit of chemistry, but I think that's one of the main things. And for potassium sorbate, it also can cause some like liver inflammation as well. So those are the two. They have amazing benefits for food safety and stability. It'll extend the shelf life for your product, but I think health wise, those are some two that I really wouldn't consume if you don't have to. And there's also artificial dyes and lakes. So everyone kind of knows artificial dyes like red number 3 or red number 40. A lake is basically just combined with aluminum salt. It allows it to be combined with like fats and stuff. So you've got dyes, can be water soluble. Lakes are lipid soluble. And I really just say like not to eat those if you can, because in high amounts there have been cancer causing correlations. In general, by really, really high amounts, most people aren't going to be eating that high amounts of dyes or lakes. But if you think about children, those are the biggest population eating constant amounts of those artificial dyes. So it's a big issue for them. And I think, for the youth, that's really not the way that we want to go. So I would stay away from those. Then a lot of people also know about like nitrates and nitrites. Those also can have some cancer causing linkage. They have really great benefits for meat. They really maintain the food safety and also the quality with the colors of the meat. But they've been seen to cardiovascular disease, chronic inflammation, and neurodegenerative issues. So I really just think staying away from cured meats and things that have nitrates or nitrites is a good way to go as well.
So the big ones, just to kind of summarize, are the sodium benzoate and potassium sorbate, the preservatives, and also the artificial dyes. You mentioned the word lakes. Would we see lakes on the label, or would we just see like red 40 or like yellow 10?
Yeah, you would definitely see lake on the label. So it would say red 40 lake. So if you think about Cheetos, for example, those are mostly fat, so they're lipid soluble. So lakes will be more associated with Cheetos, chips.
Okay. And then nitrates also going to be found in like wine. And then one word that Cameron did mention that I think a lot of you guys would know is endocrine disruptor. Endocrine disruptors are just things that are going to potentially imbalance your hormones. So that's definitely just something to throw out there in case you're like, what does that word mean? And then lipids are literally just fats. It's just a sciencey word for fats. And then flipping that coin, are there any food additives or like those non-recognizable ingredients that you would see on labels that actually aren't a concern? Like you maybe wouldn't find them in your grandma's kitchen, but you don't need to be concerned about them.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the biggest ones is probably probiotics. So if you think about yogurt, you've got some probiotics in there. They're really hard to pronounce. You're not really going to understand what they are, but they have really amazing benefits for your gut. So that would be Lactobacillus bulgaricus and Streptococcus thermophilus. Again, very long names, but if you see those on the label, they're actually really good for you, especially bacillus as well. So that can be added to some different beverages and kombucha. I also think of inulin as well. So inulin is basically just fiber. It's a prebiotic. It has really amazing benefits for your gut, but also for an ingredient matrix. You can actually form a gel, which is really cool. So instead of using a thickener, you can use inulin, which is really cool. I'm also thinking of, ascorbic acid, which is just vitamin C. It's an antioxidant, really, really great for you. Tocopherol, weird name. It's just another name for vitamin E, also an antioxidant. I'm also thinking of citric acid as well. So it's basically just, if you think about citrus, like an orange, it's a very similar thing to that, but it adds acid to products. So if you think about a product like tomato sauce, for example. Sometimes they'll add citric acid to that just to lower the pH a little bit. Again, just meaning that it's making it a little bit more acidic. It just means that it's going to be more safe. But there's absolutely no issues with that. Not bad for you at all.
I want to stop you for a second because I have heard like ascorbic acid, yes, it is vitamin C, but isn't it like just one component of vitamin C extracted?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so generally not going to be like unhealthy, but you're not going to get the same benefits as if you had like a whole food ingredient that contained like the whole complex vitamin C. Would that feel correct for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I would so much rather somebody eat a strawberry that has amazing vitamin C or an orange. But I think if you see ascorbic acid on the label, it's just not something to think, oh, I wouldn't eat this because I don't understand what the ingredient is.
Got it.
Yes.
All right, and then I know you had a few other ones you wanted to go through, so I'll throw it back to you, Cameron.
Yes. So I'm also thinking of pectin as well. So that's added to jams a lot. It's basically just to make the jam more firm and spreadable without having to cook it for a super long time. But pectin is literally just parts of different fruits. Like even tomatoes have their own pectin. So it's basically just extracted from the food. Absolutely no harmful issues with that. It's really only going to benefit your product, honestly. That's not something to think that that's bad. If you've made jam before, you've probably added pectin to your jam.
And inulin and pectin are actually prebiotics, so they feed the microbes, the bacteria in your gut, and that can be really beneficial for the microbiome. And so a lot of people don't get enough fiber in their diet, so if you are one of those people that doesn't consume a lot of fruits and vegetables, grabbing a product with pectin or inulin added in, like as Cameron said, like as a thickener or whatever, can actually be beneficial for just helping to subtly boost that fiber intake.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that we can honestly do an entire episode on just the gut microbiome, and that's something to look out for the future because there's so much that goes into that and all the benefits of the gut. It's basically our second brain, which I know Maria has mentioned before. So yeah, amazing benefits. And also on the topic of the gut microbiome, if you think about fermented beverages or foods like kimchi, you've got kombucha, or even fermented pickles, a lot of the time they'll have lactic acid added to the product. It basically just starts the fermentation process. So if you see lactic acid, if anything, it's not bad. It's actually really, really great because you're going to add those benefits of getting your probiotics in from the fermented food that you're eating.
We love fermented foods. And then before we even started recording this episode, we were talking about like processing and fortification. If you want to just mention vitamin and mineral fortification real quick for us.
Yeah, absolutely. So some of the ingredients you'll probably see with that are like niacin, riboflavin, thiamine. Those are all vitamins. Niacin's B3, riboflavin B2, thiamine B1. You've also got some minerals like calcium carbonate, ferrous sulfate, zinc oxide. They're kind of scary to see on the label, in my opinion, and I think it'll throw a lot of people off. They're not bad for you at all. It's just mineral and vitamin fortification. But I think some of those ingredients can be indicators that the food may be more heavily processed. So if you think about white breads, white pasta, a lot of pasta you'll see will have those things in them, but it's sometimes better just to find pasta with one ingredient. So I think that they can be indicators, but if you see them on the label, it's not that those ingredients are bad themselves. Just want to mention that, yeah.
And again, like when you see that extra fortification, it's an extracted vitamin, so it's always going to be better to have a whole food option. But like Cameron said, you don't necessarily need to be scared of it. Just be aware that like, oh, is there a whole food option that would be even better? And maybe picking one that has a little bit less.
Yeah, I also just want to mention, too, that for a lot of countries and areas that don't really have a lot of fresh fruits or vegetables where you're not going to get those vitamins or minerals naturally, think about third world countries or food deserts. I think it's really important for those foods to have the fortification so at least they're not going to be deficient in those vitamins and minerals.
Something is better than nothing.
Exactly.
And keeping in mind, like, as a holistic nutritionist, I generally am like very biased towards whole foods, which is valid, but I know that in order to create safe products that people can access, like you said, like in food deserts, there probably are some food additives that you just simply have to put in. So can you talk to us about like what ingredients are really, really needed in products?
Yeah, I think it's such an amazing question because there's a really fine line there, right? Like you want whole foods and you want this thing to be the most nutritious possible, but it's also like in reality, you're going to have this on the shelf for a really long time. So you're going to want to make it as safe as possible. One of the first things I think of is xanthan gum. Gums, scary, also scary to see on the ingredient label. When I was taking my nutrition education, I also was like, am I supposed to be eating this? But xanthan gum has amazing benefits for products. It is a thickener, but also, like when it's sitting on the shelf, it's thick, but then it's shear thinning, kind of a weird term, but it basically means that when you add some sort of agitation to it, even when you're pouring the sauce, it actually thins. So it's thick while it's on the shelf, but it thins as you're pouring it. It has really amazing benefits, and there are absolutely no harm-causing issues to your body with xanthan gum. If anything, I've seen some benefits actually for cardiovascular health and some other things that xanthan gum provides. And that's really because it's a soluble fiber. I really haven't found any health implications, even in extreme high amounts. If anything, I've seen kind of evidence that it lowers LDL cholesterol, which is why it's better for cardiovascular health. And
we also love fiber. We love fermented foods and we love fiber, guys.
Yes, we love fiber here. And xanthan gum really is used in a lot of products, and for me, there's absolutely no issues with them. If anything, I think that they're pretty needed for some specific sauces.
It's really good to know, because that's definitely one that I have, I see it on the label, I'm like, no thank you. And really, it's like everything in moderation, right? Like if you're looking at a pasta sauce and you're like, realistically, I'm not going to use fresh tomatoes to make my own sauce, and something has xanthan gum, now we know, okay, maybe we don't need to be scared of it. It is okay to make that choice and be like, okay, I'm going to go for convenience on this thing. It's all about like aiming for like as nutritious as whole food as a diet as possible, but then allowing yourself like the freedom and the opportunity to like pick these products if you need them. Like you don't have to force yourself to try to be perfect in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, absolutely. I think also there's not a great customer perception with xanthan gum, so I think there are a lot of food scientists researching other ingredients that can have very similar benefits. Even mushroom mycelium, so that's kind of what I'm studying right now, but there's other strains that are also being used to research as emulsifiers, so to kind of make things stop separating, but also make things thicker and stabler over time. So that'll be some interesting research coming out, but as for now, I don't think xanthan gum is an issue at all.
Awesome. So are there any other additives that you feel are really truly needed in a product from a quality and like food safety standpoint?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the big ones that's top of mind is natural flavors and natural colors. There's kind of a fine line between artificial colors and artificial flavors. And I think a lot of people are also kind of iffy about natural colors and flavors. Maria and I have talked about this in the past. But I think that natural colors and flavors are really beneficial to products, especially for colors with batch-to-batch variation. If you think about vitamin water, for example, there's all these different colors. There's blue, there's red, etc. And one of the main reasons is, yes, for customer perception of like, ooh, pretty color, I'm going to go and grab it. But the other reason is for batch-to-batch variation, because maybe the normal color of the product is like a grayish color. Doesn't mean anything bad, but customers wouldn't really like that. And then maybe from batch to batch, that color would change a little bit. These colors really mask that and make it look really nice. And I think, they really are beneficial because there could be more food waste because something gets thrown out because customers aren't liking it because of batch to batch variation. Maybe the customer thinks something's wrong with it. But I think for natural flavors as well, they're really beneficial for products where it would be really difficult to get a really good strawberry flavor, for example, while it being safe. So you have strawberries, they're pureed, they will probably have a 2-day shelf life, I'm thinking. But if you have natural flavors, now that shelf life can be extended for a lot longer because it's not volatile in the same way.
Yeah, so you're kind of sacrificing a little bit of the nutrition for the convenience factor of it can sit on the shelf and then be a food option for people for a longer duration of time. So if you want to prioritize the nutrient density, you could do something like a strawberry puree for a natural flavor, but then it's going to have to be refrigerated. It might end up getting thrown away if it sits on the shelf without being purchased for an extended period of time. So it's really like you have to weigh the pros and cons.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Also, an important thing to know is the sustainability aspect of natural colors versus artificial flavors, which I think a lot of people don't really think about. Say you're using spirulina as a natural color for your kombucha, for example. I've seen that a lot for GTS. GTS is a really good kombucha that has spirulina in it. So for spirulina, you're going to have to grow the spirulina. You're going to have to feed it with water and nutrients. You're going to have to harvest it. You're going to have to dry it, mill it, and then from that, you're going to have to put it into your product. But now if it's in your product, say kombucha, now it's going to be a lot more sustainable to light, oxidation. It's going to be more susceptible to color degradation and also flavor degradation over time, where artificial flavors really don't have that same issue. So you just kind of make it in a lab and you put it into your product. And I think there is, again, like we just said, a fine line between natural and artificial when it comes to like health implications. But I think, they're added in such low amounts. I really don't think there's a big issue with natural flavors. But if you can get something that just has, natural spirulina in it, that's much better. If it actually says spirulina rather than saying natural flavors, because it's a little bit different.
Definitely an interesting conversation to have, because me as a consumer and holistic nutritionist, if I see natural flavoring, I'm like, what does that mean? I'm immediately going to not buy that product because I don't really trust that it's truly going to be natural and that it's going to have no negative health implications. So can you give us an example, or I guess another example of like what natural flavoring could actually be and why they don't specifically define like what is in it? Using just like a ambiguous natural flavoring or a natural coloring term, like what are those actually?
Yeah, honestly, such an amazing question, because it's really confusing even for food scientists. I think the biggest reason why they don't actually put what the natural color or flavor is because of proprietary reasons. So when I was talking about before, one of the jobs that food scientists have, one of them is being a chemist. So you basically put together something that will be or taste exactly like the natural thing would. Think about natural flavor of banana, for example. So they're getting all these different sensory components from the banana and making a natural product out of it. But because of that formulation, they can't really say like what it exactly is. But I think if you just heard me, they're putting a bunch of different chemicals together to make a natural flavor. So again, there is kind of like a fine line between, is it artificial? Is it natural? So I think that if you can, it's better if it says like beetroot powder for color, or if it says spirulina for color. But I think natural flavors in general, if we're talking about what's needed, I think they're really beneficial for things that may have some batch to batch variation that might be not acceptable to customers.
So natural flavoring and natural colors, they're necessary to cover batch to batch variations so that consumers will continue to buy products, but you could be sacrificing a little bit of like the nutrient density, and like it seems like there could be chemicals that are defined as a natural flavor.
Yeah, I think it's what you define as a chemical, right? So say you have a banana, right? There's going to be all these different sensory components. I'm thinking right now of butter. The main chemical component of butter in its natural form is diacetyl. So people will take diacetyl and make, like movie theater butter out of it, which technically isn't even butter. It's like a vegan form of butter. It's an artificial form of butter, but they're taking diacetyl to make it taste like the flavor, but it's mostly just like unsaturated fats.
I've specifically wondered about that one because I've recently read the ingredient label for popcorn and it said butter flavoring, and I'm like, what the actual hell is butter flavoring? This sounds like it could be dangerous. And having this conversation with you, I'm realizing like, yes, it's, you're taking the whole food and you're extracting like specific parts of it out. So maybe you're not getting the big picture nutrition, but it's potentially not like dangerous or negatively impacting you in the same capacity.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right, just to make sure we're like as clear as possible on this, from a nutrition standpoint, perhaps you want to avoid grabbing a lot of products that have natural colors, natural flavoring. But from a food science perspective, it is really important for the product from a quality standpoint and from like a safety standpoint to make it shelf stable. So generally, You don't need to be scared of it, but you do want to be mindful that you're not consuming a whole bunch of products that have natural colors or natural flavorings. Does that feel right to you too, Cameron?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's important also to take a quick pause right now and just kind of define exactly what we mean by needed. From my perspective, needed is like, okay, is it needed in the product to make it stable, to make it safe, to make it efficient, to make it cheap, and to make it accessible? So I think putting all of that together, you can have ingredients like lecithin, for example. You think about sunflower lecithin, soy lecithin. Soy lecithin is in a lot of dressings. It's in also a lot of chocolate, if you've seen it before. I personally feel very indifferent to lecithin. It is an emulsifier. It helps make things more stable. It makes the chocolate a lot more creamy too, prevents grittiness. And if you want to take that out, you're going to have some real innovation there. You're going to have more cocoa butter, or you're going to have some sort of technologies to make it more creamy and have really good sensory properties, but that's going to also increase the price. So if you see a chocolate with lecithin, my bet is that it's probably going to be cheaper than something without it, and in my opinion, there's really no issue with it. There are chocolates, like we actually just tried one recently that used dates, and somehow the dates, I don't know what exactly they were doing, but they didn't have to use lecithin, and they made it into a really creamy, nice chocolate. However, it's about twice the price of a normal chocolate with lecithin in it. So it's less accessible. You know, in general, the health, I don't know if I would say it's the same. I think lower ingredients are better. However, if we're talking about what's needed, I think it really is beneficial to have lecithin in products.
And again, that moderation standpoint, if you have the extra money where you can buy a product that is double the price, uses dates instead of lecithin, great, go for it. But if you don't have that cash, and it's okay to maybe pick a product that does have lecithin, or to make it yourself as an alternative that's even cheaper if you're willing to take that time and that energy to do it.
I love that explanation. Yeah.
Awesome. And then I think you wanted to talk about carrageenan as well.
Yeah. So you've probably seen carrageenan on some different labels. You think about thicker sauces. You will also see it in things like shelf-stable protein milks and stuff, creamers, that type of stuff. It's really, really good at stabilizing things and preventing separation. You think about your creamer, you really don't want that to separate over time. You think about like a shelf-stable creamer. So it's really good at binding things and preventing separation. And there's actually 3 different types of carrageenan. They will all react differently in different ingredient matrices, but also have different outcomes. Like some will make a product more brittle, for example, or some will make something more pourable and more creamy. So it just depends. And I think carrageenan has really, really great benefits in products in making it the texture and making it stable over time of exactly what you want it to be. However, in really large amounts, I've seen some studies that say that it kind of disrupts the gut microbiome a little bit and can cause dysbiosis, which basically is like a lack of diversity. There's some more harmful bacteria being present than good, which obviously is not what we want. However, I've worked in manufacturing, and the amount of carrageenan that we use in products is so small compared to using starch as a thickener. You can use a tiny negligible amount of carrageenan. So all in all, you're really not going to have harmful benefits of it unless you're kind of just eating it straight, really, like unless it's in really high amounts in products, and it's not. I think the benefits that it adds to products really, really outweighs anything that it can do to your gut microbiota because you're having it in such small amounts. I think it's something to be aware of. You know, if you can stay away from it, try. And there's a lot of technologies, kind of like I was saying about xanthan, to have similar benefits with different ingredients that are being researched right now. However, I think, like I said, the benefits really outweigh the cost of it. But if you can stay away from it, maybe that's something. But if we're thinking about what's needed in products, I think it has really, really great benefits that outweigh the harmful.
Okay, so overall, carrageenan may be one to be more mindful of and slightly avoidant of because it's in a lot of products. So like for me, in my mind, if carrageenan is in a lot of different products, even if you have a small amount, that builds over time.
Right. Yeah.
So just being mindful of how many products you're selecting that have it. Whereas like xanthan gum, lecithin, we don't really need to be as concerned about, even if it's in like a number of products that you consume.
Absolutely.
And I just want to say, like, this is why it's so helpful to have somebody like Cameron that is interested in holistic health and nutrition and, like, studies that aspect of it. Because as you can see, like, carrageenan maybe can disrupt the gut microbiome, but it is so important for quality in food products. So if you're somebody that is purely a food scientist and you're only thinking about the product and the manufacturing side of things, you might end up accidentally putting in products that could over time have a negative health implication for the general public. Whereas if you have somebody like Cameron that is also studying holistic health, nutrition, she's going to factor that in and be more likely to find other alternatives that have no negative research. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly. I think it's also so important for people to understand that carrageenan is necessary in quite a few products, but it's important for people like me as a food scientist to try and come up with ingredients and ways to use different ingredients to have the exact same outcome without the negative gut and health impacts that ingredients like carrageenan have.
Yeah, and like just an aside, like I mentioned in the teaser at the beginning of this episode that this is a field that Cameron is literally creating, because when we Googled it, like, we didn't find a holistic food scientist. And while we're on the topic of holistic food science, the last thing I wanted to talk about are what are some of the really great alternatives, the more supportive products that people can be gravitating towards if they want to be healthier, but they also aren't necessarily willing to make all the products at home and they want something a little bit more convenient.
Yeah, I absolutely love that question. That's actually a big question that we would talk about when I was studying nutrition. And one of the biggest ones is frozen foods. Not a lot of people will talk about them and think about them as the first possible thing to pick up. Most people will think of, I'm going to get fresh peppers, I'm going to get fresh cucumber and fresh avocado and all these things. But frozen foods are just as amazing, and they have basically the same exact nutrients as fresh, and they're so much more easily accessible. You're able to access them in food deserts and places where it's just not accessible to have a bunch of fresh produce, and it's also much cheaper as well. So I love frozen fruit, I love frozen vegetables and mixes that are frozen. Just keep a little bit of an eye on sodium if you're getting some sort of mix, and maybe some of the other ingredients that are in there, just to see kind of what's associated with the product. But in general, frozen fruits and vegetables are an incredible option. I think another really good one, which we already touched on probably 2 or 3 times, is fermented foods. Fermented foods are an amazing alternative option of something that has a really long shelf life, but it's going to have amazing ingredients and probiotics that are going to actually help benefit your gut. Increase the diversity, increase the good gut bacteria, increase short-chain fatty acids, which end up helping your body and its metabolism. So really amazing options. If you think about sauerkraut, kimchi, kombucha, natto, which is a sticky fermented soybean, and also tempeh are really good options. Something else that I think not a lot of people really know about is HPP. So in other words, it's called high pressure processing. Because it has the word processing in it, I think a lot of people are really scared by it, but it's actually a really amazing emerging technology that helps extend shelf life and gets rid of bad bacteria while also keeping most of the nutrients within the product. Ithaca Hummus actually uses HPP so that they don't have to put preservatives in their product, and they have a longer shelf life because of it as well. It's a really great alternative technology rather than just using heat to make something stable for longer. And the really cool thing about it is that it's using pressure just basically affecting the non-covalent bonds associated with bacteria while maintaining the covalent bonds that are more associated with nutrients. So one of the people in my lab gave a really great analogy of kind of how much pressure it really is, which if you think about a 300-pound man stepping on your thumb, it's going to be a lot of pressure, right? Think about 300-pound men stepping on your thumb. That's the amount of pressure that it puts on food to kill the bacteria but retain the nutrients. It's about 85,000 psi. Think about how much pressure goes into your tire. 85,000 psi is what it uses. Really amazing technology. It's been so beneficial for shelf life and stability without using preservatives. So really cool option.
Love that. And Cameron and I were talking about it off mic, and it is a little bit costly, But honestly, for those big brands that are truly focused on sustainability and health outcomes for the public, they're probably going to publicize that information. You might just need to go on their website, shoot them an email, but they're probably going to make it pretty findable that they're using this process.
Yeah, exactly. And other companies that are using it are Wholly Guacamole. If you think about the guacamole that they're making, or if they have avocado in those little pouches and it just has avocado in it, and if you're wondering, how does this not go bad? It's because of HPP, which is really cool.
So cool. I had no idea that existed. And that it maintained any of the nutrient complexity, honestly.
Yeah, it's honestly mostly because it doesn't really use much heat at all. It's kind of like a cold pasteurization technology.
So I always thought that pressure and heat both destroyed the nutrients. Is that not the case, or pressure to a lesser extent?
Pressure to a lesser extent, it's mostly the combination. So if you think about canned fruit, for example, that's going to be retorted, which basically uses an immense amount of pressure and heat to kill the organisms within the product. So think about your canned oranges, for example, or canned beans. They have some of weird texture and taste sometimes associated with them. It's because a lot of that stuff is being disrupted. But just pressure on its own retains most of the nutrients, which is really cool.
Thank you so much for sharing all of this information, Cameron. This has been so eye-opening. Truly enjoyed this experience, and I hope that the listeners really resonate with it. I'd love to have you on for future food science episodes.
Yes, of course.
And then how can people find you if they want to follow and learn about the emerging holistic food science field?
Yes, of course. So you can find me. I just created an Instagram that's just about food science. So it's called The Holistic Food Scientist. And then if you want to follow any of my research, the things that I've been putting out, my handle is cfletcher3760 for LinkedIn. And I just want to say thank you so much for listening. I had such a good time talking about everything, and I hope you guys learned a thing or two. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out by Instagram.
Yeah, let us know what your other food science questions are. Hello, beautiful human. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you learned something new and felt inspired or blessed. If so, please take a moment to share this with a friend who's also working to improve their health and wellness. And leave me an honest review on Apple Podcasts. It lights me up to know that this podcast is helping you. Now, go get some sunshine on your skin, and I will meet you back here on Saturday morning for another episode. Bye!